She was just trying to do the right thing, feed a hungry old man. But what happened next shocked everyone. Fired on the spot, she never imagined 6 battle-hardened Marines would storm into the diner demanding justice. This isn't just a story about one meal. It's about honor, courage, and a fight nobody saw coming. Stay tuned, because what unfolds will change everything you thought you knew. Don't miss a single moment of this incredible story. Watch till the very end to see how one small act sparked a powerful movement. If you believe in courage and justice, hit that subscribe button and join us for more stories that inspire and empower. The breakfast rush had died down. The booths at Melby's diner were mostly empty, save for a few regulars nursing burnt coffee and staring into their phones. Emily wiped down the counter, humming softly, her apron stained with syrup and kindness. That's when she saw him. An elderly man in a tattered army jacket stood just outside the diner window. His skin was pale beneath the grime, his movements slow, deliberate, dignified, despite the pain in every step. He reached into the trash can beside the curb and pulled out half a bagel. He brushed it off, looked around to make sure no one was watching, then took a bite. Emily's heart twisted. Without hesitation, she ducked into the kitchen. "Rita, can I take a plate off my check?" she whispered to the line cook, already piling scrambled eggs onto a dish. She added toast, a side of bacon, and poured a fresh cup of coffee with shaking hands. The man was still outside when she stepped through the front door. "Sir," she called gently. The man turned, startled. "You don't gotta do that, sweetheart," he rasped, eyes squinting beneath the brim of his faded cap. "I ain't nobody." But Emily smiled and extended the plate. "You're someone to me. And someone deserves a hot breakfast." He hesitated, hands trembling as he accepted the meal. "What's your name?" he asked. "Emily," she replied, helping him to the bench outside. "Yours. People used to call me Sergeant Thompson," he said softly. "Long time ago." Inside, behind the glass, the diner manager Chuck had been watching. His jaw clenched, arms crossed tight over his chest. He turned to the other waitress and sneered. "You see that? Turning this place into a soup kitchen." The bell over the door jingled as Emily came back inside, wet from the morning drizzle, but glowing with warmth. She barely made it 2 steps before Chuck barked. "What the hell was that?" "I fed a man," Emily said, her voice calm. "You fed a liability," Chuck snapped. "He's bad for business. I told you, don't serve anyone who can't pay. Especially not bums." Emily stared him down. "He's a veteran." Chuck's voice was ice. "You're fired." A hush fell over the diner. Emily didn't flinch. She turned, picked up her purse and walked out, leaving behind her job, and unknowingly, a spark that would light a national fire. The air inside Melby's diner had thickened. Forks hovered midair. The elderly couple in booth 3 had stopped chewing. A mother at the window table clutched her toddler tighter. Everyone had heard it. "You're fired." Emily stood by the door, her shoulders straight, even as the world tilted beneath her. She opened her mouth to respond, but Chuck, red-faced and puffed with false authority, stepped forward, slicing through the silence like a dull blade. "You think this place runs on charity?" he hissed, jabbing a finger toward the window, where Sergeant Thompson sat hunched over his eggs. "That guy. He's not a customer. He's a problem. A liability." Emily blinked, stunned not just by the words, but by the ease with which he said them. "That problem," she said slowly, "served this country. That liability wore a uniform so you could sling hash browns without fear. You really want to humiliate a man who fought for your freedom over a plate of eggs?" Chuck's face curled into a sneer. "Spare me the Patriot Act. You broke house policy. We don't serve without payment, and we don't invite street trash to scare off paying customers. He's not good for the image." Emily shook her head in disbelief. "You care more about image than integrity?" Chuck pointed at the register. "What I care about is keeping this place open. You want to feed the helpless? Go start a soup kitchen." But don't do it on my dime. The door creaked as a few customers stood, leaving bills on their table, throwing Emily sympathetic glances on their way out. Chuck watched them with irritation. See. This is what happens. Emily took off her apron and folded it with care. You're wrong about him, she said, placing it gently on the counter. And you're going to be wrong about what happens next. She turned and stepped out into the light drizzle, shoes hitting the sidewalk with purpose. Sergeant Thompson looked up as she approached, confusion in his eyes. You all right, miss? He asked, wiping crumbs from his lips. I will be, Emily said softly, kneeling to adjust his jacket. You matter. Even if that place doesn't remember, some of us do. She didn't see the teen in the corner booth lower his phone, wide-eyed, recording everything. But the internet would. Very soon. It started with a single post. The teen from the booth, Marcus Rivera, a local high school junior, had uploaded the video before his pancakes even got cold. He titled it, Waitress Fired for Feeding a Homeless Veteran. Watch this. Just 47 seconds long. Shaky hands. No fancy edits. Just raw truth. Within an hour, it had 10,000 views. By lunchtime, it was on Twitter, TikTok, and Facebook. Emily's calm defiance, Chuck's cruel words, and Sergeant Thompson's quiet dignity were replayed again and again. The comment sections lit up with fury. She lost her job for showing compassion? That's a veteran. I don't know who Emily is, but she's my hero. Local news picked it up by 3 p.m. A reporter stood outside Melby's as Chuck awkwardly tried to explain company policy, sweat soaking through his collar. His voice cracked on camera. We have rules. We can't just give food away. But the damage was done. In a small, one-bedroom apartment across town, Emily sat on the floor, stunned. Her phone buzzed non-stop, strangers messaging her with support, old classmates offering job leads, and distant family she hadn't heard from in years. Her Venmo flooded. Someone had posted her handle, and within hours, thousands of dollars poured in. But Emily didn't smile. Not yet. Her thoughts weren't on the fame, or the outrage, or even the money. They were on the man in the faded army jacket. Sergeant Thompson had disappeared from the bench after she left him with a hot drink and a blanket. She'd circled the block twice, asking around. No one had seen where he went. Who was he? Did he have family? Shelter? Medication? She opened her laptop, refreshed her inbox, and stopped cold. A new email, subject line, You don't know me, but I know Sergeant Thompson. The message read, My name is Captain Morales. I served with the sergeant in Fallujah. I saw the video. We lost touch years ago, but if what I saw is true, then we owe him everything. He saved my life. Tell me where to find him. Emily's hand flew to her mouth. The tears came before she could stop them. The internet had seen injustice, but someone from the past had seen a brother. And the Marines? They were watching. And they were coming. The next morning, the sun hadn't yet warmed the dew on the sidewalks when Emily heard a knock on her apartment door. 3 sharp raps. Not the Amazon delivery she was expecting. She opened it to find a tall man in a crisp military coat, straight-backed with steel-gray hair. Behind him stood 2 others, one with a duffel bag slung over his shoulder, another holding a tablet. They weren't smiling. Emily Jacobs? The lead man asked. She nodded, still in her hoodie and pajama pants. Yes. I'm Captain Daniel Morales, 3rd Battalion, 1st Marines. This is Staff Sergeant O'Leary and Corporal Jenkins. We saw the video. We came to find Sergeant Thompson. Emily blinked, momentarily speechless. You really came? Captain Morales stepped forward, his voice lower now, more human. He's one of ours. We don't leave our own behind. Emily's throat tightened. I tried to find him. After I got fired, he was gone. Disappeared into the city. But he looked bad, Captain. Like, he needed help yesterday. Morales nodded solemnly. He's proud. Always was. Saved 5 of us during an ambush in 2004. Refused a medal. Said he was just doing his job. He looked down. But we lost track of him after he got out. Until you fed him. Emily invited them in. They set up a makeshift command post on her small kitchen table. Maps, digital facial recognition databases, local shelter lists, veteran outreach organizations, all spread like a battlefield plan. The Marines worked like men on a mission. Because they were. 2 hours in, Corporal Jenkins called out. "Ma'am, you said he called himself Sergeant Thompson, right? Check this." He turned the tablet around. A VA registration from 8 years ago. Photo attached. Same tired eyes. Same scar under his chin. Full name, Samuel Thomas Thompson. Last known residence, abandoned halfway house in Oakview. Captain Morales grabbed his coat. "Let's move." Emily stood up too. "I'm coming." He gave her a long look, then nodded. Moments later, they were packed into 2 SUVs, speeding across the city, adrenaline humming under every breath. None of them knew what condition they'd find him in. But one thing was certain, this was no longer a viral moment. This was a rescue. Because for these Marines, and for Emily, this wasn't about headlines or hashtags. It was about honor. And they weren't going to let Sergeant Thompson vanish again. The old Oakview district had once been a proud corner of the city. Now it was a skeleton of brick and silence, boarded up storefronts, broken glass crunching underfoot, and a smell of mildew clinging to the air. As the Marines' SUVs pulled up beside a crumbling halfway house, Emily felt a chill roll through her despite the morning sun. "This is the place," Corporal Jenkins confirmed, studying the address on the tablet. VA records say he stayed here for a few months, back in 2018. No forwarding address since. Captain Morales turned off the engine and stared at the building, jaw clenched. "Sam used to hate cities. Said they were too loud, too fast. I never imagined he'd end up buried in one." Emily walked alongside the Marines as they approached the warped door. She had no badge, no uniform, just a soft voice and a hard reason to be here. They knocked twice. No answer. Captain Morales tried again, louder. "Sergeant Thompson. It's Captain Morales. 3rd Battalion. We're here for you, brother." Still silence. Then, a soft shuffling inside. Faint. Slow. The door creaked open an inch. A face peeked through, weathered, sunken cheeks, eyes bloodshot and wary. But behind the fog of hardship, recognition flickered. "Danny," the man rasped. "Sam." Morales stepped forward, eyes glistening. "You look like hell." Sergeant Samuel Thompson opened the door the rest of the way. His coat was the same one Emily had seen him in, only now, it seemed to hang heavier on him. His hands trembled slightly, though his posture straightened at the sight of his brothers. "You really came," he said, voice barely a whisper. "We never stopped looking," Morales replied. Emily stepped closer. "Hi, Sergeant. I'm Emily. I served you eggs." Thompson's lips twitched into something between a smile and disbelief. "You're the reason I didn't freeze last night. You stood up for me. You reminded me I still mattered." "You do," Emily said gently. O'Leary handed Thompson a thermal jacket. Jenkins offered bottled water and a protein bar. But it wasn't the supplies that hit him hardest. It was the way they stood, shoulders squared, back straight, as if he still wore stripes. Thompson's chin trembled. He saluted weakly. And they all saluted back. Because this wasn't just a rescue anymore. It was a homecoming. And the man behind the tattered jacket? He was a hero waiting to be remembered. Later that afternoon, the diner was having its usual lull. Plates clattered. A couple of bored regulars sipped black coffee while the manager, Don, leaned against the counter pretending to read an invoice. Everything was back to normal, or so he thought. Then the bell above the door chimed. Everyone turned. 6 Marines in full uniform stepped through the entrance, boots echoing against the tile. Their presence was magnetic, commanding, undeniable. Behind them stood Emily, calm but unflinching. And right in the middle of them all was Sergeant Samuel Thompson. Cleaned up, shaven, wearing a new jacket with a patch that read, USMC, retired. The diner fell silent. Even the cook peeked out from the kitchen. Don's jaw slackened as he stammered. "See, can I help you folks?" Captain Morales stepped forward, pulling something from his coat. A folded newspaper, Emily's story, with a photo of her and Thompson. "You remember this man?" he asked, nodding toward Sam. Don swallowed hard. I mean, yeah. I didn't realize he was. Decorated veteran. Silver Star. Tourniquet 3 men under fire in Iraq. Volunteered for a second tour. And you threw him out for being hungry. Don shifted uncomfortably, glancing at the other Marines now forming a silent line near the booths. Customers stared, phones subtly aimed toward the scene. Emily stepped up. Her voice was even, calm, but carried like thunder. "I fed a man who needed a meal. You fired me for it. And now," Sergeant Thompson added, voice strong again, "you're looking at 6 Marines who came to remind you what service and humanity really looks like." The silence was heavy. Don blinked, trying to compose himself. Look, I didn't know who he was." "That's the problem," Emily interrupted. "You don't need to know someone's story to show them dignity." Captain Morales leaned in, voice low and stern. "You disrespected a Marine. You disrespected your own country. That uniform he wears, it means something. Not just to us, but to every decent person who's ever worn an apron or boots." Then, slowly, Morales turned to the other customers. "We're not here for revenge. Just a reminder." Sam nodded once. The 6 Marines saluted him, right there in the middle of the diner. And one by one, the patrons stood and applauded. Some cried. Some filmed. But nobody ever forgot the day 6 Marines marched into that diner. Not for war, but for justice. News of the Marines' unexpected march into the diner spread like wildfire. What started as a quiet act of kindness and honor became a powerful movement that shook the city, and beyond. Emily's phone wouldn't stop buzzing. Messages flooded in from strangers thanking her for standing up for Sergeant Thompson. Local news stations clamored for interviews. Social media exploded with the hashtag #FeedTheVeteran, inspiring people across the country to share their own stories of compassion and respect for veterans. At first, Emily felt overwhelmed. She was just a waitress who did what she thought was right. But the attention came with an undeniable truth. Her small act had touched a nerve. Veteran organizations reached out, offering support for Sergeant Thompson. They arranged for him to receive medical care, counseling, and housing, a chance to rebuild the life he'd fought so hard to protect. But the movement didn't stop there. Restaurants and diners nationwide began pledging to offer free meals or discounts to veterans in need. A coalition of Marines and civilians started organizing honor tables, where veterans could eat without fear of judgment or discrimination. Captain Morales and his team held press conferences, speaking not just about Sergeant Thompson, but about the invisible struggles so many veterans face when they return home: homelessness, PTSD, and the crushing weight of forgotten service. Emily found herself at the heart of something much bigger than she'd ever imagined. She spoke at schools, community centers, and veterans halls, urging people to remember that behind every uniform is a story of sacrifice and humanity. One evening, as the sun dipped low over the city skyline, Emily received a letter. It was from Sergeant Thompson. Handwritten on a crisp sheet, it read, "Dear Emily, you saved me that day, not just with food, but with hope. You reminded me that I am not forgotten. Because of you, I'm starting to heal. Thank you for being my family when I had none. With gratitude, Samuel T. Thompson, USMC." Emily folded the letter carefully, a lump in her throat. She realized then that sometimes, a single act of kindness can set off a wave of change. And that the true heroes aren't just those who fight on the battlefield. They're the ones who fight for each other, every day. Months had passed since the Marines' dramatic entrance into the diner and Emily's firing. But the fire they ignited refused to fade. In fact, it blazed brighter than anyone could have imagined. Sergeant Samuel Thompson was no longer a forgotten veteran wandering the streets. Thanks to the support of Emily, the Marines, and a swelling community of caring strangers, he had a new place to call home, a modest but warm apartment not far from the city center. More importantly, he had a renewed sense of purpose. Emily and the Marines had become unlikely partners in a mission to change the narrative for veterans everywhere. Together, they launched Operation Welcome Home, a grassroots initiative providing meals, medical care, job training, and emotional support to veterans in crisis. On a crisp Saturday morning, the diner reopened its doors, not just as a place to eat, but as a community hub. The same manager, Don, now stood behind the counter wearing a new pin that read, "Proud to support veterans." He caught Emily's eye and gave a genuine nod, a silent apology and a promise wrapped in one gesture. The room buzzed with life as veterans and civilians mingled freely. Volunteers served coffee, while local musicians played soft tunes in the corner. A bulletin board displayed success stories and upcoming events. It was more than a diner, it was a sanctuary. Emily caught sight of Sergeant Thompson across the room, laughing quietly with a group of young veterans. The old weight seemed to have lifted from his shoulders. He caught her gaze and smiled, a smile that spoke of healing, of battles won beyond the battlefield. Captain Morales approached, clapping Emily on the shoulder. "You did more than feed a hungry man," he said. "You fed a spirit." Emily shook her head, eyes glistening. "No. We did this together." The crowd erupted in applause, but for Emily, the real victory was deeper, the knowledge that compassion could rewrite a story once thought lost. As the sun set outside, casting warm golden light through the diner's windows, Emily knew this was only the beginning. Because sometimes, the strongest battles aren't fought with weapons. They're fought with courage, kindness, and the unwavering belief that no one should ever stand alone. And thanks to 6 Marines, 1 brave waitress, and a determined veteran, nobody would. This story reminds us all that kindness can spark a revolution, and courage isn't just found on the battlefield, it lives in every act of standing up for what's right. Together, we can honor those who serve and ensure no one ever feels forgotten. Thank you for watching. Stay strong, stay compassionate, and never stop fighting for justice.